you were on Instagram during the 2020 election, you might have noticed some influencers that were posting pro-Trump, pro-MAGA conspiracy theories, et cetera, right? So now the thought is, okay, these are chuds. This is organic. You certainly wouldn't believe that there were big money funders behind these social media posts, right? Again, you'd think, well, they're just chuds online. Of course, they're going to peddle this stuff for free. No, it turns out not so much. According to a new investigation, that finds that unsurprisingly, many of these big accounts are, funded and boosted by not only powerful organizations, but former members of Donald Trump's administration. HuffPost Jesselyn Cook writes this, quote, "A network of right-wing meme accounts run by teenage boys and young men have erupted into an advertising powerhouse reaching millions. These memers, who regularly post far-right conspiracy theories, anti-vax propaganda, and other incendiary clickbait, first caught the attention of obscure brands selling cheap MAGA merch, who started paying them to display ads to their rapidly growing conservative audiences." So again, these are people who might have been conservative, whatever, or maybe even not, because it's not always the case that somebody who's conservative starts posting on these sites because they see the conservative audience is kind of a cash cow. So now, little did they know that their efforts, again, they were getting paid for running these ads. Members of Donald Trump's inner circle would catch on and then start paying them even more. Since the 2020 election, these influencers have quietly collected payments to run ads for the Trump campaign's election defense fund. Former senior Trump aide Jason Miller's new social network Gitter, and Mike Pillow's betting company MyPillow, and as recently as a few weeks ago, the National Republican Senatorial Committee. So these are people that are paying these influencers to basically boost Republicans. All right, well, there you go. So now, in a few cases, the memers have included high schoolers as young as 14. Some of these discreet ad deals were brokered directly between teens and former members of the Trump White House, communications obtained by HuffPost reveal. So again, they're recruiting kids, children who run meme pages to scam old people into voting Republican and not vaccinating. Wonderful. In fact, I have an example of some of these memes, just real quick here. Again, it's the memes. Notice here, there are click the link in my bio. Click the link in my bio. Donate to Trump's election fund. Okay. So now you're not going to be surprised that that's how they make their money. These ads come in the form of memes with captions, as you've seen, urging people to click customized links inserted into the memers' Instagram bios, which lead to the promoted parties' websites. They typically end up earning, these influencers, a small conversion fee for each person who uses that link, doled out by third-party marketing agencies working with big-name clients. Given the massive reach of some of these pages, often boosted by Instagram's recommendation algorithms, this can quickly add up. For example, the recent Getter ad campaign, memers earned 85 cents per conversion, with a cap of 25,000 conversions. Now, if you're online, you can rack up 25,000 views pretty easily. You can rack up 100,000 views, 200,000 views, 1 million views. If a quarter of 100,000 views clicks on that, I mean, that's a lot of money. In fact, 25,000 conversions is about $21,000. So these groups, these influencers are getting paid a serious amount of cash from pro-Trump groups. Now, understand that this money does not exist on the left. Not on the actual left. Yes, there are Democrats that have done this. Michael Bloomberg was another example of him trying to pay influencers. But other than that, other than the corporate Democrats, this money does not exist on the left. So it is very, very lucrative for someone to sell out to the right wing. they got all the money. So now these pages are serious income streams. And in fact, at least one team is planning a tropical vacation with his money. Others are saving or investing theirs. And so, they're setting themselves up pretty nicely on sharing damaging, destructive memes and posts. Wonderful. So now you might be thinking, well, okay, look, good for them. Capitalism, right? It's capitalism, baby. Well, again, as I mentioned, they spread harmful disinformation, money, anti-vax stuff to encourage people not to get vaccinated, not to wear masks, and of course to spread the big lie about the election in 2020. And so this is a problem. That is a major problem. Disinformation is a gigantic issue. And so now you might think, look, okay, isn't there something that they can actually do about this? Well, unfortunately, as HuffPost explains, it's kind of a wild west online. The services that they provide, these memers do, are highly valuable, and they fostered relationships with huge niche communities and can launch hushed influence campaigns that are free from oversight and transparency. Now, there are mandates that are enforced through regulated advertising channels that they're able to skip. So just, they bypass it, and so there's no transparency. And now they explain that this could open the door to dark money campaigns and targeted opaque disinformation operations reminiscent of when the Internet Research Agency, that's the Russian troll farm, essentially, attempted to influence US voters in 2016. So now, anybody of you who are arguing that that did not happen, you're living in another reality. Of course it happened. Yes, they did memes, they did bots, they did trolls, Facebook and Instagram ads in a very targeted campaign. Now, of course, you could argue about the effectiveness of that campaign, that disinformation and influence campaign. I'm on the side of course, that it didn't have that big of an effect on the election in 2016. I think the biggest factor in the loss of Hillary Clinton was Hillary Clinton. That's it. I think it had a lot to do with her running a terrible campaign. She was the establishment of establishment candidates, running on basically no change, and getting the media to elevate Donald Trump. Again, terrible, awful candidate. But nonetheless, and I really don't want to relitigate the election, but the overall point is these campaigns do happen. They probably also happened in 2020 and will happen more. Billionaires are getting into the game. And so, look, billionaires, other countries. I mean, imagine, billionaires in Israel going and funding these campaigns, right-wing campaigns to try to get more, unconditional aid to the Israeli military from the United States. That's not a thing that, that's not something that's out of the realm of possibility. Or you could look at Saudi Arabia, the Saudi princes, giving money to these influencers in order to push certain political candidates who have certain stances that are pro-Saudi Arabia. And so there are things, there are very, very big concerns about transparency here when it comes to this spending. And so, and look, again, that's the big the big problem with money in politics, of course, media, advertising for political campaigns, etc. I would love to absolutely get all the money out of politics. And this is just another example of those influence campaigns, of that money being used to try to influence voters, using that dark money. And worse, almost none of the memes that HuffPost had observed were labeled as paid endorsements, a form of deceptive advertising actually known as stealth shilling. In certain cases, memers' failures to disclose their compensation likely constitutes a violation of federal law for which they, the promoted parties, and any intermediaries could be held liable, and could being the operative word, because the nature of the ads themselves and how this is all set up, we'd actually have no idea what posts, what memes were actually paid for. We just don't know. In fact, there's a reason that we don't know. because unlike an official ad placed through Instagram's business platform, which would be stored in an online database and subject to public scrutiny, the memers tend to delete the sponsored posts from their pages after just 24 to 72 hours. Now, I understand that there's things like, the Internet Wayback Machine where you can go and you find cached pages and things like that. But if you don't know that they exist, if you're not an outside entity that's looking at these pages and seeing what, which could be paid for, again, which you don't even really know which ones are paid for, and then they delete them afterwards, again, huge problem trying to catch these people, right? And not only that, but like the reason that they can delete these 24 to 72 hours later is because of how the algorithms work. So they post this, gets a ton of traffic initially within the first few hours, maybe the first day, and then the activity massively drops off. And so, of course, the next day, since there's no activity or less activity, the message has already been sent, the money has already been made. Well, okay, there's no use for the post that could get me in trouble. Delete. Gone. And there goes your evidence. It's gone. It's gone. So this is virtually untraceable messaging. And again, anybody can use it. Now, unfortunately, the worst people in the world have been using it, and they've been caught using it. Now, here's some examples. According to one memer with hundreds of thousands of followers, they said a lot of this stuff is very down low. So they don't mean on the down low or just on the down low. It means you're in the sewers. He and other memers who've been paid to run ads promoting one of several Trump-affiliated entities have also posted content spreading false information about COVID-19 vaccines, urging their followers to defy mass mandates, calling for the deportation of female politicians of color, and alleging that President Biden is a pedophile. Some have additionally run ads for separate clients selling fake vaccination cards, QAnon apparel, and toilet seat projector lights that shine open-mouthed photos of Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, or former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton into one's toilet bowl. Talk about obsessed. Like, I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, or Hillary Clinton, but what possesses someone to buy a toilet projector so that you could defecate into their mouth? Like, that's weird. Like, that's like super bizarre. Like, what normal person does that? No normal person does that. It's weird. It's creepy. But the memer said, of all these posts, there's a lot of money to be made. You just got to know the right people. Like others who spoke to HuffPost, this person happens to be a minor, which is another problem, and requested anonymity, some as young as 14 years old. So literally paying child labor. There's got to be a law against that. Now, some also declined to speak on the record for fear of endangering business relationships. And so that gets me to the other part. The business relationships with whom? Who is actually paying them? Well, we have some names. Turns out former Trump aides Sandra Clark and Ori Renat are people that are running these companies that are paying these teenagers. Renat happened to be the former chief digital officer of Trump's White House. Together, Clark and Renat had launched Legend, an influencer marketing platform that has collaborated with these young memers. These young memers have done business directly with Ori Renat, according to emails and Instagram messages reviewed by HuffPost. Again, this is from the kids themselves. So they're like, yeah, we're totally getting paid by this. Look at all the money. Look at how much I'm flossing here. Like, I got all this cash, and I'm getting it from these, I'm getting it from these people specifically. Appreciate that. Appreciate the honesty, the candor about this. Or else maybe we never would have found out. Now, of course, just to add, by the way, the reach of these meme pages and these posts on Instagram are spread, of course, by people like Donald Trump Jr. as well. that massively elevate their reach and, of course, help out with their grift. That said, as I mentioned before, they're not the only people to have done this. People on the right, it's actually becoming increasingly common for political figures, candidates, to partner with influencers to run ads on Instagram and other platforms. Now, as I mentioned before, Mike Bloomberg tried to do the same thing when he was running for the Democratic nomination. I think there was an entire thing with him not paying people after he lost. And he promised that he was going to pay people or give them health insurance and things like that. I think that was more of his campaign staff. And then just, oh, I'm not going to pay you anymore, so you're screwed. Sorry. Oh, wait, you promised to do that. Yeah, but I'm Michael frickin' Bloomberg, and I don't really give a damn because I'm super, super rich, and you're not, and you actually believe me. Oh, suckers. I can't believe you'd work for me. Suckers. But again, so now here's the thing about this entire phenomenon of paying influencers. Look, I think transparency is one major point, right? So obviously the least that we can ask for is to know who bought off these influencers, have some sort of transparency. Okay, so hey, look, at least you know, hey, this person's been bought off. All right, hey, at least we know. Now, it's still pretty messed up, but at least you know, right? Now, here's the other thing, by the way. This is also against Instagram's policies, and it's also illegal. Stealth shilling happens to be a violation of the FTC's poorly enforced ad transparency laws, which apply to the sale of goods and services with legal requirements for online political ads, which fall under the FEC's domain, are narrow and outdated. Unlike FTC regulations, which address influencer marketing in detail, the FEC rules in this realm haven't been updated since 2006, years before Instagram and many other influencer-populated platforms even existed. So massively outdated. The FEC stipulates that public communication made by a political committee must display a disclaimer, and that disclaimers must also appear in political committees' internet websites that are available to the general public. That's, of course, whenever you see a political ad paid for by such and such, on behalf of such and such, right? And so, but these influencers, though, they don't have to disclose that because the rules are not defined. They need to be updated. So even though it is seemingly against the law, the rules haven't been updated, nor are they ever enforced, or rarely enforced, especially against these big groups. So obviously that needs to change. We don't need just, to update the laws, but we also need to actually have some enforcement of these laws. And I think that's unfortunately unlikely to happen because the very people and groups doing this, of course, a ton of money. They have armies of lawyers. They have lobbyists. That's why ultimately, before we can even begin to solve this problem, we've got to get money out of politics. I mean, that should be the general goal anyway of what we need to do. Because it's obvious that this is a corruption problem. Other than that, all I can say is just consider, if you watch somebody online, if you watch an influencer on Instagram, just know that somebody might be able to buy off your favorite influencer. And to be wary. Take the things that they post with a grain of salt. Especially if they're huge, and especially if they're posting right-wing memes. Because, at the end of the day, you never really know. Be careful. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.